finalists, and ultimately we have a pitch night at the Wyoming Theater for the top 5 business plans, and there is seed fund money behind that. So if there's a business idea that needs financing, this is a great way to go. So please get those business plans in. I also want to thank Century 21 BHJ for allowing the use of this beautiful facility. So thank you very much. And Susan, I know Susan has coordinated that. Susan is a sales associate with Century 21, in addition to being a Forge board member, right? And Susan was gracious enough to provide the beer for tonight. So can we give her a very key part of our program, so thank you. And hopefully we will leave everything in good order, so maybe we can even return in the future.
Absolutely, anytime.
So, very good, well thank you. For every tech meetup, we try to have one featured topic or a speaker. And at our May event, which was at Co-work of the Montgomery, I had the opportunity to meet Tyler Wells. And Tyler offices at Co-work at the Montgomery. And so he explained a little bit about what he's got going on. I thought, you know what? That would be a very, very cool topic for a future meetup event. And so lo and behold, tonight we have the pleasure of introducing Tyler. He is the Director of Business Development for Mimo Monitors, and based out of Chicago, is that right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. But Tyler runs his business development activities out of Sheridan, which is really, really cool. So an example of someone that is able to work successfully remotely out of Sheridan. A great example for others that potentially could do similar things. So it's really wonderful to have Tyler, and hopefully he can introduce what he does here. And I'm hoping that he can give us a little bit of an overview of Mimo monitors and the cool things that you got going there. So without further ado, I'll let you take it up.
Thanks, Scott. Well, appreciate you guys all coming out here tonight. I'm a Sheridan native. I graduated from the University of Wyoming, and then I said, I want some adventure. So I went to New Jersey. I spent the last 6.5 years there, and I said, I traveled quite a bit for my job, so I said, you know what, I want to see my family more than twice a year. I can work out of Sheridan. So thankfully I work at the Co-work building. That's really panned out well, and now I have the opportunity to tell you guys what I do. So I am the Global Distribution Sales Manager for Mimo Monitors. And you may be asking, what is Mimo Monitors? We are a tech hardware firm, and that we specialize in small touchscreen solutions. So 7 to 27-inch touchscreens, Android tablets, bright sign all-in-one media players, and large format open frames. So for an open frame, a large open frame, if you've ever checked in on a United kiosk to check into your flight, you've probably used one of our products. So they're everywhere, and while you may not have the knowledge of you touching one of our products, you probably have. So our HQ is in Chicago, Illinois, and our competitive advantage currently, especially right now, is the fact that we're manufactured in South Korea. Tariffs don't affect us. So when I go to my clientele and say, hey, or a new business that I know have been working with our competitors, say, hey, we're manufactured in South Korea, we are not going to hit you with a 25% tariff. So right now, it's really working in our favor. So we've been incorporated since we've been privately incorporated since about 2008, and the growth that we've seen in the past 6 years has been exponential. So these are just a few of the clients that I interact with and that I've worked with throughout my 6.5 years of working with Mimo. I'm the longest tenured employee of Mimo, so I like to brag about that internally for sure. So, I'll start off with our capabilities. So we're heavily in the AV space, in teleconferencing. If you go to a Google building anywhere in the world, you'll see on one of their tables, just like this, Polycom is actually a client of ours. You'll see instead of this, you'll see a touchscreen interface. That's what we do. Meeting room reservation. If you go into Visa, you'll see, hey, you want to check into this meeting at the room level, you can tap our touch screen and you book the room that way. Digital signage, industrial control, point of sale, point of purchase, small kiosks, they're literally everywhere. So, Walt Disney uses them for, on their cruise ships, for informational screens right outside your room. So if you want dinner plans at 5, you can see what ballrooms are open. Just, they're a way for companies to utilize our product to get information to their customer easily and efficiently. And if you go into grocery markets, if you go into banks, if you go into any companies right now, you'll notice they're huge. They're massive screens. You're talking 60 inches, case in point. And we're getting accustomed to the fact that we're ignoring those. We're going into a grocery store, we see the TV in the aisle, and we automatically disregard them. So these clients are actively using smaller to get in front of customers. So at a grocery store now, you're going to be checking out, and it's going to be running promotional advertisements right there. They're going to say, hey, yeah, we need your signature for your credit card. Okay, you sign on our touch screen. So it's getting much more personal and very, very personal. So just a brief overview of our products. Our core competencies are small. We won't go big. 7-inch, 10-inch are primarily what we started off with. So about 2008 to about 2014, we only produced 7 to 10-inch. That was our market. And then the demand from our clients like Google, Honeywell, Fujitsu, they said, hey, we need something a little bigger. We need Android. We're getting away from Windows. So we accommodated those needs. So as you can see, right up here, 7 and 10-inch USB touchscreens up the top. Those are used for point of purchase, point of sale. We have open frame versions that you can see are used in the advertisement for, I think it's Christian Dior. And then Android tablets. Those are everywhere. Those are primarily room control, automation, manufacturing, stuff like that. Open frames are for entrepreneurs and companies that build their own systems. So, airport's the best example for that. You got all the kiosks that you check in on to check in your flight, prints off, I have a client that works in prisons. And you go in there and you can prisoners can FaceTime their loved ones from outside. So that's a kiosk. And they use 21.5 inches for those. And they're in every prison. And ironically enough, those kiosks actually curb people paying off guard. Everything's automated and online and networked. So now you can't bribe a guard to get a pack of cigarettes in. You have to go through the kiosk for every transaction. And places like El Salvador and Nicaragua, they're going to a kiosk solution to make it easier for them. So while some people don't agree with the kiosks and how automating jobs like the fast food, that's a touchy subject. But in a lot of cases, it's actually making it more efficient for companies and holding companies more accountable, especially with our data, which is a whole different entirety conversation. But we help with that. And last but not least, our biggest partnership is Brightside. They're the biggest media player, manufacturer in the world. And their growth path is almost identical to ours. And them being a partner of ours has really opened up a lot of different possibilities for us on a global scale. And before I get off the products, it's the next thing that's going to be that the big market is going to be outdoor. None of these displays right now, if you were to take them outside, they're going to have the black screen of death. The sun's going to hit them, it's going to just evaporate the LCD panel, and you're just going to have one big brick of a black monitor. But the outdoor monitors are coming, and you will see them. You'll see them coming, and those are also going to open up a lot of different markets. And so next time in about a year and a half, look at gas stations, and I think you'll know what I mean. So the strategic advantage and the competitive advantage of Mimo monitors is we're small, we're nimble, we're efficient, we're manufactured in South Korea. But most importantly, we have an engineering team that's identifying needs in the market and building products to suit those needs. And the most recent one is the Haptics touchscreen that some of you got to play with right out here. And that's revolutionary. That hasn't been done before. There's forms of haptics technologies that when you get a vibration on your phone, that's haptics. But this is a whole new revolutionary type of haptics that the applications are still being developed, but they're progressing quite nicely. So I can't put it as eloquently as this short video can, but here's a brief introduction of what I'm talking about.
Slide your finger across the screen and tell me how you feel. The choppy like really feels like I'm taking something in every line.
It's just cool. I believe you guys can draw lots of attention to what I'm saying now. Trying to screen this, check this out.
We did a flagship showroom for the window and board manufacturing, and part of that was needing to feel the different textures. We didn't have this ability to do that, but how much cooler if they could have, felt the different vinyl versus wood.
Well, you get to interact with the device or the ad itself, it's going to be more a feeling of being engaged with that product or that brand.
Going from outside the baseball and then you hit the baseball, it's like you might as well beat it.
You can feel the differences.
Can you do that on any tablet or just your screen?
Just on this screen.
I think touchscreens lead us. If we add a different dimension to being able to interact with the device, this would be great.
So that's important. The Tanvis company, they're an integral part in this collaboration in the technology. They're the software aspect of this technology. They developed the software where you can take a picture and you can put it in a program like Photoshop. And then you can identify the parts that you want to feel and not feel. They're the back-end software part of that discussion. We're the hardware. So if you look at our screen, you'll see that there's a kind of a, sorry. There we go. So that's just a brief introduction of what haptics is. But you'll see a little grid on the screen. And what that does is when you run your finger, we're actively sending electrical currents to your finger to pull your skin at the points that we've designated. So if you're, the picture of the guy's beard, we've pixelated that and added a degree of friction to each one of those pixels, that when you run your finger over, it pulls your skin there. So, makes sense? Kind of trippy, very trippy. And the crazy part is it's worked. I've done this 1,000 times with the screens, right? There was one time it wasn't working, but I had done it so many times that I could still feel the lines. I had still had something that, oh yeah, I felt it, and someone else was like, no, it's not working, man. So it is trippy in the literal sense too. So we're excited about this. Advertisers, are really pursuing this technology, but there's also an ethical side of this technology that we're keeping in mind. If casino companies that make casino kiosks and games, they have approached us, and we don't want to do business with them because it's kind of an ethical dilemma. Yeah, sure, they may want tens of thousands of these things, but we don't quite agree with having another point in which people engage with a machine to take their money, right? I mean, if you hear the visual, you hear the audio, you see the visual, it's captivating you and keeping you entertained. If there's one more stimuli, is that going to keep them not longer? Is that going to, So with anything, you got to weigh the pros and the cons. The pros are definitely outweighing the cons, but we've identified some cons as well. So that's Mimo, and that's what we do. And we're not only in North America, we're in South America, we're in Israel, we're in Europe, we're in predominantly in Asia, Middle East, and I've been responsible in opening up the Australian markets, the Middle Eastern markets, the South American markets, and what we're seeing now is the opportunity down there is exponential. There's lots of big projects, and now that we have some credibility after the past 6 years of growth, our growth is going to be continuous, and we have a fairly promising future in front of us. So I'm open for any questions.
Could you talk a little bit about your background and how you got associated with this company? I mean, if you don't mind, would you mind doing that?
More than happy to, Tom. It was, so I moved out to Newark, New Jersey, which ironically, 3 weeks after I moved there, Hurricane Sandy hit, and Times Newsweek came out with an article that said, most unfriendliest cities in the world. Newark, New Jersey was one, Islamabad, Pakistan was number 2. So that's what I moved to do. But I was working in sports. I played sports at Sheridan High School. I was obsessed with sports. I went to work out there for the professional soccer team, the New York Red Bulls. I didn't like it as much as I anticipated, and this guy, a family friend of ours, came to me and said, hey, would you be open to working for a startup tech firm out of Princeton? Get out of the ghetto, do something kind of fun. So you had me get out of the ghetto. So I went down there. I got really technical. We didn't really have a technical team. I was the first sales guy, and I took everything apart. I fixed it, and I got really technical. And then, thankfully, about a year and a half after I started there, electrical engineer from a much larger company purchased us, and the success has been there the last. So it was just kind of by fate and by chance, and just a phone call of, hey, would you like to do something different? I'm like, yeah, but I hope you don't make me install software or anything, because I have no idea how to do that. So it's been awesome. I mean, and the part about my job that I enjoy the most is 2 days are the same. I'm always learning, always interacting with new clients, and we get to work on really cool things. So that's basically. And then since I travel quite a bit, I was just like, I'm not living in New Jersey. I've rode this ride, and it's an expensive ride. So let's go back to Wyoming, work remotely, and see how that pans out. So far, it's worked really well.
How long have you been here back in Sheridan?
About 8 months, 6 months, 7 months, yep. So since December.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
So other than feeling the guy's beard, where do you see how do you see haptics being applied for?
Absolutely. So the most successful example we've seen of advertising, most of the cases that I've seen successfully are advertising so far. But the dream is ADA compliance, visually impaired. We would love for this technology to kind of start the fire of innovation for the visually impaired. They don't really have anything that helps them navigate buildings. They have auditory cues, but they need some sort of thing that helps them navigate. And we think this could happen. And the thing with haptics that most people automatically assume is, oh, it works with Braille. Well, Braille isn't that universally taught to the visually impaired anymore. And secondly, Braille is a raised surface. This is a flat surface that is flat and it's sending electrical signals. So Braille's not going to work. So we would love to see ADA compliance, but the greatest example that we saw successfully was San Francisco Giants. You saw the baseball. So they took this to the Giants team store, and they just put a screen with a video on there with a bunch of baseballs. Okay, and they said, hey, and they weighed customer engagement with them. So people would come up, watch the video, play with the baseball, whatnot, and customer engagement was 10 to 15 seconds. Next day, they took the haptics touch, where you could feel the ribs of the baseball, the ribs of the bat, everything like that, and engagement went up to about 1.5 and 2 minutes. And the most important part of that was not only did they engage and interact with that for 2 minutes, they went and grabbed other people and said, hey, you gotta check this out. So as an advertiser, you're just like, sweet, I can capture people's attention, and while advertising is cool, why don't we try to do that for, socially responsible initiatives and things that actually matter instead of buying a can of Coke or something trivial like that. You could do it from a social impact as well. So, like I said, this is very preliminary in terms of technology, but there's some pretty cool things that we think could arise out of it.
Are there any health risks or concerns that have been identified with this technology?
There hasn't, that's a good question. These are in a lot of medical devices and hospitals, so they're vetted very heavily for electrostatic charge, EMC, radiation, stuff that typical users you may have heard about with your phone and stuff. Those are all, since they're in a medical atmosphere, they've all been tested heavily for those type of applications. Even the screen is vetted for how much bacteria accumulates and stuff on the surface, and thankfully not that much. So I'll beat my chest a little bit and say, yeah, they're perfectly healthy, but that's what I know. Yep.
About power consumption, how do they compare to a regular screen?
Good question. Thankfully, you get power over USB. So if you look out there, you have a 2.0 USB cable, which I think is about 1.2 volts or 0.6 amps, something around there. Then you have a USB 3.0 cable as well that provides the additional power for that electrical signal getting sent to your finger. So in terms of like a typical display to this, I would say they're about the same. Without the haptics, they're much less, just because they're running off USB or
half, double, twice. What was it? Twice the draw, or
so. I would say I don't know, and the reason I don't know is not very many other companies make 10-inch monitors. Everyone's about 15 and up. So it would be about half, because the competitor that we're comparing it to is about twice the size. But in terms of power consumption, it's very low. On our smaller sizes, on our others, they're industry standard. Our 15s will match up about the same to another 15 and all the way up the scale.
You demonstrated moving your finger across the screen. Can you do it when your finger stays stationary and the signal goes past your finger? Is that also able to generate sensation?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a stationary picture, but it's progressing towards moving and interacting. activity on a moving screen. So essentially you have your one screen and one picture now. You're going to lay out 200 pictures that have all been pixelized, and then you can run them in a video where you can feel it. That hasn't been done yet, but people are actively working on that I know of. I know it can be done.
So it'd be something like you put your finger on and it's a snake, but now instead of just the skin, you'd actually feel it undulating?
Yeah, so you could hold your finger there, and as long as, and the pictures are moving.
Yeah.
And if your finger is touching one of the pieces that have been identified as pulling your finger, as needing friction, then you'll feel it. But if you don't hit those, then it'll just go by, the video will go by and you won't feel anything.
So it could, almost like a pulse, you'd be able to feel a pulse. Touch.
That's something I haven't ever thought of, but yeah, I don't see why that would be. So you could have like a heart rate monitor, for example, right? And it's going, and you could feel, you could pixelate the different, ups and downs of the pulse. Yeah, you can do that. And with this technology too is audio and visual cues. So you're turning up that audio. Remember on the old iPods when you clicked it, when you used your thumb on the touchpad and it clicked, you can do the same thing for a confirmation that you're doing something.
So is on the new iPhone and iPad, the harder, it's almost like a 3D effect, right? So you touch the screen, the more you touch it, is that haptic technology as well? So the amount of pressure you put on the screen